Before we go any further, subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you can get new videos depending on the schedule. How long has it been since my last vlog? Oh, this is pretty much a long break in terms of model railway vlogs, but here we are. There are a lot of things that I had to say about it. So, let's hop to it. After the previous vlog, I decided to finish the Japanese trail for now. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it is a major pain to get it right. I had to put the grass sprinkle in the glued foam boards multiple times. The reason for that is because I started becoming more advanced. Every time I sprinkled the grass, the white stuff gets back into it. Well, by that I mean the glue. And I had to paint it again and again and again. Adding insult to injury, I had to borrow one of the leaf bags that my parents got since we had to clean the yard at the time. And I had to shake it real good in this bag, but it's probably not a good idea because keep in mind, I did this indoors. But after some trial and error, I finally got it, but decided to extend it because I don't want to edit in a blank space or something like that. So I decided to buy a few more boards and then paint it and then add in a sprinkle of grass, and that's it. Before that, I had to borrow one of the Sharpies to make some sort of path so that I can paint it later. And even after all this, I decided to do something I'd never done before, adding in the flowers and shrubs. I placed the bright pink flowers near the trees, the pink flowers in the middle, and then the blue flowers at the end. Then I added in the other flowers, the purple ones next to the rocks, and later on, the dragon statue. And then I added in the shrubs just for fun. Now, you may be wondering why I decided to add in a Japanese trail in my train room. Well, the answer is simple. One, it's because I have a fascination for Japan, and two, I will explain at the end of the video. Here are a few things that I forgot to add in the last vlog, or last two vlogs. I decided to add in the wood. Well, mini wood. Not the ones from the next guide to Minecraft, but the mini wood I bought from my local hobby shop. Given that the layout was meant to look like a state park, I have decided to make a custom ladder, and one of those hurdles at the time would be how I'm gonna get it to stick together. However, my mother suggested me that I should try out the super glue. And surprisingly it worked. I let it stick overnight, and surprisingly, it stuck together. Next would be the steps for the Japanese trail, except it wasn't brown, it was the color gray. And the same would apply to the fence for the Japanese trail. You may be asking why. Well, it is because I don't want the eye catcher being all white or being exposed. I was originally going to use the slopes, specifically the cardboard and chicken wire, but I had to use the wood because the eye catcher is very tiny. Now, in terms of eye catchers, I had to measure the height of the wood and draw the line from a marker. And I had to add in glue to each of them just to make it realistic. And then I added in the grass, and I took things too literally. And you know what? It doesn't matter. I would often see moss coming from the state parks on certain trails anyway. As for the stairs, I did the same, except I had to add in glue to each step, sprinkle the grass, and then add in bright pink to represent the pink leaves falling. Yep, I decided to add in more grass. As I said, I started becoming a bit more realistic and started becoming more advanced when it comes to building model railroads. I decided to remove a handful of foam boards, including the trail and the lighthouse section, to get it done. The first of the overhaul is, of course, the limestone section. To make it more realistic, I resorted to glue the aspects of the rock and sprinkle the grass around it. And the same would apply to the limestone and the ladder. And I got the different boards, and I had to ask someone who is into this hobby. After you add in the trees, do you add in the grass after you add in the trees? Because sometimes the grass was in the trees. The tiny ones are easier to pick up, but the same can't be said about the big ones. And I remembered that I should have cut the big ones in half. And that is what I had to do in favor of a potential road project. As I said, sprinkling the grass is nothing new. and it's still a pain to get it to stop exposing the glue spots despite me using a paintbrush to spread it. And when I shake it and put it on its side, it might have looked something out of a grass store. And you may have noticed on Instagram that I have a very tiny apple orchard, hence why I made a demonstration on gluing and spreading it with a paintbrush. Well, it is done. So far, with the last minute addition of the boxcar being abandoned, well, it could be converted into a hut for campers, and added in a few remaining flowers. However, I will acknowledge that the flowers are a bit bigger than tiny, but hey, I'm just trying to make it pretty. However, this will be the final layout, but the same can't be said about the grass mats, as things are going to change. Now here's something that I have been wanting to do. As I said, I started becoming more advanced. I know I sound like a broken record at this point. So, I unfortunately had to remove the grass mats in favor of bigger foam boards from Menards. Mom got me the first 6-pack of them, and then a week later, after the 4th of July, my dad and I bought in 2 more 6-packs of foam boards. And then after much time, I finally got what I wanted. The exception of the gaps, which I had to do something with. I decided to buy the foam spray, and Dad showed me how to do to fill in the gaps. Then I got overboard in a good way. After they were all dry, I had to cut them, knowing the spray would grow and expand. And let me tell you something, it is very impossible to cut. Compare this giant foam board to a very small craft knife I had to borrow, and you can tell the size difference. And it is a bit better after I got home and was exhausted after this. Had to sand it and then leave it until now. I decided to challenge myself to this. No, I didn't paint the wall this time, but decided to paint the boards again. This time, I decided to paint the trail and the parking lot. The latter was kinda impossible, and I painted the parking lines with the paintbrush and had to use one of the remaining wood pieces to get it right. However, when it's finally done, I decided to give the rest of the lot some grass. After trial and error of layering it, it's finally over. In addition, I had to add in tinfoil to prevent the grass from getting into the track that runs the trains. As a bonus, I decided to paint the remaining board blue. It used to be the color gray because at the time, it's supposed to represent the bridge. But considering I have a few more foam boards, I decided to do just that. Also, considering that I have a lot of Legos, I decided to make a temporary supports for the tracks where the trains would go through. Do bear in mind, I say temporary because this may or may not be a permanent thing. I might have 3D printed models for the supports and possibly make bridge kits from Bachman or Atlas. So remember about what I said about the Japanese trail? Well, I decided to talk about it. For a long time, I thought long and hard about what to call my layout or fictional railroad. So after much consideration, I decided to lean towards a theme centered around a railroad and a state park named after a mythical creature, the biggest one being Bigfoot. I have wanted to make this layout and state park dedicated to a handful of mythical creatures. The Japanese trail is actually named after Kitsune, a fox spirit from Japan. I imagine this state park would celebrate a Japanese festival or cherry blossom festival every year to respect and appreciate Japanese culture. The next trail is named after Sasquatch himself, with 2 or 3 more trails related to the names of mythical creatures. So given the theme of a state park and mythical creatures, I decided to name my layout and road Sasquatch Lines, and a state park Mythical Woods State Park. Honestly, I kinda had a lot of fun coming up with this name and the theme of the layout. I intend to make this layout to be more Indiana Railroad focused, specifically on New York Central, Monon, Wabash, Canadian National, etc., with occasional roads outside of Indiana. And international. Oh, and who wouldn't forget about the solar engines for an occasion? While I mostly collect diesels, I mostly have plans on collecting more steamers, despite me having a somewhat small layout. I mean, there are a list of things that I wanted to buy that you're seeing right now. Well, I decided to talk about what's next for this layout progress. One of them is another tunnel project with the remaining foam boards, and possibly in the future, talk about the figures to give more light to my layout and state park. And except this one last thing. About what I said about the train stalling in certain scenarios, well, I decided to figure out and pull the trigger by buying a Walther's Bright Boy. And surprisingly, it's a success. And now you can definitely see the trains in action.